Welcome to the Center for Conscious Living and this beautiful time together as family and friends from all over. Join us as we open our heart and just allow this beautiful thing called life to flow through us. I am so happy that you're here. I'm Reverend Carol Lawson, and I am honored to be the one to be able to welcome you. We are, let's just mention the lovely and gorgeous Martha Creek, who is joining us for the message today. And welcome, Martha.
Today's reading is from one of my very, very favorite works by Ernest Holmes, Living the Science of Mind. Do you wish to be happy? This is a foolish question, for who would not be happy? Someone has said that we used to think we had to be well in order to be happy, but now we know that we must be happy if we wish to be well. Happiness must be based on an inward sense of security, a sense of belonging to life and to each other, a desire to give, to be kind and compassionate, and to be able to put ourselves in the other person's position. Children are happy because they have not learned to be afraid. There can be no happiness where fear is. Bless the children playing on the shore. To them belongs the pipe of Pan, the song of surf, the waves uproar, the fog, the wind, and freckled tan. No thought of care, no gain to reap, no fear of darkness, dread of night, no dream of turmoil in their sleep. Their evening star shines clear and bright. With hearts are filled with happy zest and joy for what the new day will bring, they lay them down in peace at rest. At morn for them the lark will sing. They hail the day with wild delight, their feet in naked gladness shod, their eyes with wonder gleaming bright, for such is the kingdom of God. We are all children, not so much of a larger size as of a broader experience. There is a little boy or a little girl inside each one of us, a child just emerging from the unknown, meeting experiences and learning how to live. The spontaneous joy of the child playing on the shore, the gladness of meeting the new day with the expectation of pleasure, and the quiet peace of rest at night, untroubled by inward conflicts. These are what we are all longing for. This is what faith does for us. It makes no difference what form it takes, as long as it is sincere. Somewhere along the line, we shall be called to make this surrender and again become his children. Our attempt to become happy will be futile without this. It matters not what we possess or what ambitions we entertain. We are so constituted that we are incomplete until we are consciously united with ourselves, with that which is whole and perfect. Can we learn to surrender all of our doubts and fears, our uncertainties, and our forebodings? Can we live our lives with enthusiasm, expectancy, and confidence? I venture to say that could we learn to do this, our inner conflicts would dissipate themselves. Our prophetic feelings of evil would vanish, and we should be at peace with God, with ourselves, and with others. And so if you'll go to the chat, and
it is now my great delight to introduce someone that you probably know if you've been here at all. She's been with us several times, adding her wisdom and her joy and her spark of delight and her humor and just whatever light flows through her. You know, Martha Creek has in other years spent her time going to churches all over this country and beyond, sharing this wisdom that she has. This beautiful year, she's been allowed to land and is just flowing that wisdom right through her from her home for this year, at least, right, in Kentucky. So the Reverend Dr. Martha Creek.
Precious, 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 precious people. I stand in awe very often, and I often pray that I won't lose that awe, the awe. And we think about awe certainly at a time like this, where we have a little more access to awe. But as I think about this and look around at all of these faces as you came in here, and it's like the energy that I've been holding, that I absolutely hold for each and every one of us today, you today, is an energy of Christ consciousness, of the born today, born again today. And this morning I thought, this is not about a baby Jesus. This is about an adult Jesus. This is about, yes, there was a baby Jesus. Yes, there was a baby Jesus. And yes, we celebrate the baby Jesus. And yes, there's also an adult Jesus. There's an adult Martha, an adult Carol, enough Joe, Sue, Lisa, Peggy, Sherry, Ann, Mom, Mary, Reed, Marlene, Elise, Lisa, like an adult of us that says, okay, we're not babies. We're not babies. And wisdom keepers, sages, seers, conscious, awakened, enlightened, enlightening, and living this. So as Reverend Sue read, living the science of mind, living the Christ consciousness, living the Buddha consciousness, living the higher power consciousness, whatever yours is. But it's like, well, I will as soon as they all do. As soon as they all quit acting like knuckleheads, I'll be more Christ-like. Well, let's look at what that's got us, shall we, for a minute, but not too long, because it could really take a Christmas joy away. But to say, okay, today, right here and right now, if you are Christed on this very call on December 20, 2020, 12/20/2020, you became the Christed, you became the Buddhisted, if you became the awakened one, the enlightened one, what would you do differently today? What would you actually let go today? What would you stop referencing from the past? What experience would you stop identifying as or identifying with? What would you believe is possible from a Christ consciousness, from the born again, and the spirit of Advent to bring in light, enlightenment, to bring in lighter experiences, lighter days, lighter thoughts, lighter responses, lighter reactions. Who would you be? Get a sense of how it would feel, how you imagine it would feel to be in Christ consciousness. What you've studied for, prayed for, practiced for, recited for, read for, treated for, meditated for. What if it's now? What if it actually is today? What would you do differently today? Now, see, if you start practicing this, the people in your house will think you're on a new medication. So you may have some splaining to do. Actually, it's just a shift in my consciousness. It's actually, all those books that's piled up on that bookshelf behind my head. I just started applying them today. All that science of mind work I've been doing for 30 years. I started applying it today. And then choice by choice by choice, situation by situation, interaction by interaction, I'm going to live the science of mind in this interaction. I'm going to respond from a Christed consciousness in this interaction. I'm going to pause and get myself right-minded before I fire off that email or that text or roll my eyes or first things first. So get a sense of it in your body. And a sense of then that today that there's something that'll have to be emptied out. Something that means a kenosis, a letting go, a self-emptying. And that has been the way of all the master teachers, whoever yours is, there's some reference in there to self-emptying, of purification. So any spirituality then has a sense of this, that I cannot be what I am. I cannot be as aligned with my true nature. I cannot be in the height of the Christed consciousness with all this other. So something that needs to be subtracted, let go, shed, dissolved, evolved. What is that for you? Only you know. And if after today, like in this awakening we're having right here in this highly auspicious time, this day of convergence, this day of the star coming in, this day that hasn't happened in ever, but notably even scientifically for hundreds of years, for eons, that today is that day of auspiciousness, that this is the day that I choose a different life for myself. And it's not going to be now about adding anything and adding something else and adding something else and adding something else without some emptying out, some letting go. And the quote that Reverend Dr. Carroll used in the introduction for today's talk is from a mystic, Meister Eckhart, that said, God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by a process of subtraction. So true spiritual wisdom reveals that actually less is more. Jesus taught it. The holy ones have discovered it, all of them in one way or the other. Dalai Lama, Nelson Mandela, Dorothy Day, generations of nuns, Ernest Holmes, who have taught this in some way. And sadly, Many of us still think we're going to find it magically somehow, or that if we just open the book or scratch below the surface or something, that it's there, versus this comes, as Lou sang so beautifully, from the depth of our soul, from the depth of what we know for sure. And that longing to clarify this longing to express this longing for our essential nature doesn't sleep. So how would you meet that longing today? How could you meet that longing today? And for the sake of you, and for the sake of you living in a new consciousness, in a higher consciousness, what would you say? That's just enough of that. I've entertained that just enough. I've referenced that just enough. I've identified with that just enough. And today, now let's call this the gospel, shall we? That we got some gospel this morning, and that is that I stopped trying to manufacture my own worthiness by any kind of performance or anything else, that my worthiness is inherent, that it is innate instead, and that I will never bring forth the Christed part of myself, the Christ nature in me, if I'm seeking to manufacture worthiness or value or power or respect or anything else, so that it is actually, literally, spiritually, an inside work, an inside job. So get a sense then today, if you ceased looking to anybody or anything as proof of your worthiness, if you stopped looking to people, to jobs, to professions, to family, to relationships, to make you worth something, what would that be like? And what if then today, this Christmas, this Christmas, this Christmas time is no longer about thinking about the birth of a baby Jesus as the coming of the Christ? And we awaken then as Advent leads us to reveal more about that, preparing myself, preparing yourself, preparing ourselves for the Christ to come in personal, contracted, unmistakable, visible form as you, as me. And what trust would that take? What trust will that take in you and in me that could allow such a greatness to be, to allow such a greatness to focus and communicate a Christ consciousness through this human body and through your human body? What What trust and faith and devotion and dedication will it take in you and in me to allow this greatness, to allow this light to shine, to allow this expression? So then modeling the entire divine pattern of incarnation, the entire divine pattern of love, of wisdom, of faith, of zeal, of will, of imagination, of power, of strength. To generate, to cause, to be cause. And if we learn then, if we awaken today, that we stop some of this managing and maneuvering and manipulating or believing that we can, our spiritual energy, then it's a matter of letting go and receiving what is given freely, of letting go and aligning with what that has already been given freely, that is our nature, that is inherent in us. And then this gradual emptying of our attachments to this smaller self, this identified self, that there is room now, make room for new conception, new birth, new reality, new experience, new life. And you know, life wins. Life wins. Life has its way. Life unfolds. So we can go in with our nails dug in, screeching, or we can go in with, life unfolding. And I've read a few things this week that awakened me again. And one was crisis precedes transformation. And that came through my transitions class that I was looking and working with. And that's a quote in my manual from Barbara Marx Hubbard. So some of you have known her and studied with her. And she used to say, when people would say, oh, Barbara, you know, are you going to slow down? You're 85, you're 83 years. She would say, I know, I'm getting newer and newer and newer. I know I'm getting newer and newer and newer. So what if we got newer today? Regardless of the situation, regardless of the diagnosis, regardless of who didn't invite us to their parties, regardless of our age, if we were newer today. The other quote, I don't know where it came from, but I wrote down, there must be displacement before there will be any replacement. Displacement. And some of you are experiencing some displacement right now. And it don't feel good sometimes, does it? And it's very, very scary sometimes, displacement. But think about meeting that displacement from a higher consciousness, from like, of course I'd have sadness. Of course I'm attached to this. Of course I didn't get my way. And I'm going to elevate this to see how I would see this from a different archetypical mind, from a different side of my mind, a different place in my mind, that then following that displacement is replacement that will require a great deal of surrender, a great deal of letting go. And I've even told teachers over the course of my path, if they told me to let go one more time, I was going to bite them. Because if I could let go, believe me, I would have already. You know, let go and let God. It's like, well, tell your face, because you ain't let go either yet. It don't look like. So so I accept then that letting go is a process, letting go is a practice, and there's ways and means, things that have helped. And I'll be launching into that in 2021 with David Hawkins' work, Letting Go, the Pathway to Surrender. You're all welcome to join that. It's in the website if you want information. So nowhere in our teaching is there any mention of moral worthiness, achievement, things like that, other than humble humility, trust, and surrender. Then we get in contact with, in a consciousness, in alignment with our inherent worthiness, our inherent value, our innate power, our innate wisdom. And then a little relief can come. A little relief can come as we stop trying to manage God or manage the process or manage manufacturing our worthiness. And as long as we continue to do the impossible, the unattainable, then we're not in principle to give birth to the Christ, to give birth to the Christ consciousness, that all the energy is spent over there instead of going deeper and deeper and deeper into the well. So, what have you learned from your teachings? What do you know for sure from the teachings? So as you take pause here, whoever's your teacher, Ernest Holmes, the Fillmores, Buddha, Jesus, Carol Lawson, hear the voice of your teacher. What's the message? What is your Christmas gift? What are you being given again today? To remember your guiding principle. And imagine then what it would look like as our material world and our spiritual worlds converge, that our material world and our spiritual lives, our material lives and our spiritual lives coincide, align. Within that convergence, within that coming together is the birth of the Christ. There is the Christ. There is the Christ consciousness. Teachers, Jesus, others fully accepted the human divine identity. It's both. So the coming again, whenever we are able to see the spiritual and the material worlds aligned, coexisting in any moment, in any situation, in any event, in any person, all matter reveals spirit. And spirit needs matter to show itself. So then it's not just at Christmas, but the forever coming of Christ. The infinite coming of Christ, the infinite coming of consciousness, the infinite arising of consciousness. Then it happens whenever and wherever we allow this to be utterly true for us. When you allow this to be utterly true for you. And this is how God continually breaks into history and continually breaks into consciousness, and it continually breaks, shines forth, comes forth into relationships, into interactions, into organizations, into transitions, into displacement and replacement, and whatever is new. So humanity is God's creation. Goodness, what was God thinking? And humanity alone. Humanity is called to cooperate with God in the creation. Humanity, only humanity. Humanity is it. You, me, humanity is called to cooperate, co-create, co-align, co-express God in the creation. So how will you do this? To be pointed in a new direction, to shed a skin, to no longer be blind. The amazing grace of no longer being blind or acting blind. Even in places we're not blind, to still continue to act blind, pretend that we're blind. So another word I got for today is, I've never even heard it, so Holemaker. Those who are to do this are whole makers, uniting what is scattered, united what is dispersed, united what is fragmented, united what has been leaked off, united whole makers, make whole, wholeness, to create a deeper unity with spirit, a deeper unity in God, to give birth to this, the God in us, the Christ consciousness in us, and in our own life. And then with providence, grace, midwife, a divinity in an evolving cosmos, to midwife this birth of the Christ in a consciously evolving way. So we are the whole makers of the world. See if you can say that out loud or silently. I am a whole maker. I'm a whole maker. I'm here to make whole my divinity and my humanity. I'm here to make whole the expressing of this to the world, through the world, for the world. And that we're no longer under any kind of spell that, or any kind of dependence on the teachers. Like the teachers taught, the teaching is here, the teaching is in me. The teaching is me. So the good news, the gospel, is in living this, in celebrating this. God's invitation, Spirit's invitation to participate in God's universal creative work in the unfolding of it, and then to cause and generatively cause, purposely cause, intentionally cause what we can. One great act of giving birth. Daily acts of giving birth. A universal Christ, a universal Christed-ness. So, born again today, intentionally letting go, dropping some hot potatoes, dropping some identity, dropping some references, dropping some personifications, dropping some old, tired practices, maybe. So the reverence of our own heart, the reverence and the devotion of our own becoming. Lifted up, our own Star of Bethlehem. You as the Star of Bethlehem. Martha as the Star of Bethlehem. Imagine. We begin again today. We do so on purpose. We do so knowing and believing. Deepest bow to you and sincere, wholehearted thanks for being Holemakers and for leading humanity, divinity's expression as truth, as light of love for the world and to the world. And my greatest wholehearted love to each and every one of you. So be it.
MarthaCreek.com if I can support you. Blessings.